The letter
You made
arrived on
it!
the
Come
worst
in, it's
morning of
freezing
the
out
year,
here.
which was saying
We're
something,
coming.
because
It's
the year
beautiful
had
out
not
here.
been generous. Daniel Carr was standing at the kitchen sink in his Baltimore apartment, watching his 7-year-old daughter Lily eat cereal with the focused silence of a child who had learned not to ask for things, when the mail slot clicked and an envelope slid across the floor. He almost didn't pick it up. Bills had a way of arriving in envelopes, and envelopes had a way of ruining mornings that were already fragile. But the return address stopped him cold. A law office in Carmel, California, a place he'd never been, from someone named Whitfield and Associates. His great-uncle Raymond, apparently, had died 3 weeks ago at 81. Daniel had met the man exactly once, at a family reunion when he was 9 years old. He remembered a tall, quiet man who smelled like cedar and said very little but listened to everything. They had sat together on a porch for 20 minutes without speaking, and Daniel had felt, inexplicably, completely comfortable. Raymond had left him a house. Not just any house. A cliffside property on the California coast, perched above the Pacific on 2 acres of land with a view that the attorney's letter described, almost apologetically, as remarkable. There was no mortgage, no lien, just a key, a deed, and a handwritten note tucked inside the legal documents that said simply, "I watched you from a distance, Daniel. You are the kind of man who needs somewhere solid to stand. This is yours now. Use it well, Raymond." Asterisk. Daniel read it 3 times. Then he looked at Lily, who had a milk mustache and was staring at him with her mother's eyes, white and patient and slightly worried, and he made a decision the way desperate people sometimes do, all at once, without looking too hard at the edges. "How do you feel about California?" he asked. Lily considered this seriously. Did they have good cereal there? "The best," he said, though he had no idea. "Okay," she said, and went back to eating. They drove 2,700 miles over 6 days in a 10-year-old Subaru with a broken air conditioning knob and a playlist Lily curated herself, which meant a heavy rotation of songs from animated movies and exactly one Taylor Swift album on permanent repeat. Daniel didn't complain. The sound of his daughter singing softly in the backseat, word-perfect and unself-conscious, was the best thing in his life, and he knew it. The house appeared on a Tuesday afternoon, at the end of a gravel road that wound through cypress trees and coastal scrub before suddenly opening onto the most breathtaking thing Daniel had ever seen. The Pacific stretched out below them, silver blue and enormous, catching the late sun in a way that made it look like something lit from underneath. The house itself was old, weathered shingles, wide porch, tall windows facing the water, but solid. Exactly the way Raymond's note had promised. Daniel sat in the car for a long moment after he turned the engine off. He felt something move through him that he hadn't felt in 2 years, not since Sophie died and took with her the future he thought he was building. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was something quieter and more durable. It felt like the first day of something. "Dad," Lily said from the backseat. "There's someone on the porch." He looked up. She was right. An elderly woman sat in one of the porch chairs with the absolute stillness of someone who had been sitting in that chair for a very long time and intended to continue. She was small, white-haired, thin-shouldered, wrapped in a cardigan despite the warmth, and she was watching them with an expression Daniel couldn't read from the driveway. He got out of the car. Slowly. Lily scrambled out behind him, pressing close to his side in the way she did when she was uncertain but didn't want to seem it. "Hi," Daniel called, keeping his voice easy. "I'm Daniel Carr. Raymond was we were family." The woman nodded, unsurprised. "I know who you are," she said. Her voice was thin but clear, like a signal coming from far away. "Raymond told me you'd come. Eventually." Her name was Vera. She was 84. She had lived in a small cottage at the back of the property for the past 11 years, a situation Raymond had arranged after her own home was sold to pay her late husband's medical debts. She had nowhere to go then, and Raymond, being Raymond, had simply said stay and never made her feel like a guest. "I understand if you want me to leave," Vera said, with a dignified steadiness that made Daniel's chest ache. She had clearly rehearsed this moment. Had probably rehearsed it every day since she'd gotten word of Raymond's passing. "The property is yours. I have a niece in Oregon. I can call her." Daniel looked at this woman, 84 years old, sitting on a porch she'd probably watched 1,000 sunsets from, preparing to be politely displaced with whatever grace she could hold together, and he thought about his daughter pressing into his side. He thought about Raymond, who had watched him from a distance and decided he was the kind of man who needed somewhere solid to stand. He thought about what it means to be seen by someone before you've proven yourself. Vera, he said, I just drove 2,700 miles with a 7-year-old who made me listen to the same movie soundtrack 40 times. I'm exhausted, I don't know where anything is in that house, and my daughter hasn't had a home-cooked meal in 6 days. He paused. Is there any chance you know how to cook? Vera stared at him. Then something happened to her face, something that had clearly been held in careful suspension for days, maybe weeks, broke open quietly, like a window letting in air. Raymond always said you'd be like him, she said softly. I didn't let myself believe it. Don't tell me that, Daniel said. I've only met one person worth being compared to, and I spent 20 minutes on a porch with him when I was 9. Vera made a sound that was almost a laugh. That was enough, she said. With Raymond, 20 minutes was always enough. Lily, who had been silently taking all of this in with the profound attentiveness of a child who understands more than adults give them credit for, stepped forward from Daniel's side and walked up the porch steps. She stopped in front of Vera and looked at her for a long, solemn moment. Do you know any stories? Lily asked. Vera looked down at her. Something in the old woman's eyes went very soft. I know 1,000 stories, she said. Okay, Lily said, and sat down on the porch steps like the matter was settled, which, in the way of 7-year-olds who have decided something, it absolutely was. Daniel stood in the gravel driveway of a house he'd inherited from a man he barely knew, looking at his daughter sitting with an old woman they'd met 4 minutes ago, the Pacific glittering endlessly below them all, and he understood, fully, suddenly, in a way that filled him from the feet up, what Raymond had actually left him. Not the house, not the view, not the deed or the 2 acres of coastal land. He'd left him this, exactly this, a place where a little girl could hear 1,000 stories. Where an old woman didn't have to call her niece in Oregon. Where a single father with a broken air conditioning knob and a Taylor Swift playlist could park his car at the end of a gravel road and feel, for the first time in 2 years, like the story wasn't over. Like it was, in fact, just beginning. He climbed the porch steps. Vera was already talking, her thin voice warm and unhurried, and Lily was leaning forward with her elbows on her knees, rapt. Daniel sat on the top step and looked out at the water. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Some things don't need words. Some things only need a porch, and the willingness to stay.